HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Minute for Caregivers, When Every Day Feels Like Monday, by Peter Rosenberger. Read by Peter Rosenberger.
Dedicated to Lila Giles Wilson, a woman who understands great sorrow while never losing faith. Lila is Gracie's great aunt, and she lives in Texas, and she is a delightful woman. Forward by Oliver L. North. The Mayo Clinic diagnosis wasn't good, but at least we had one, instead of guessing. After returning from an assignment as an embedded correspondent and host of war stories on Fox News, I believed Betsy, the half-century-plus love of my life, my best friend on earth, mom to our 4 magnificent adult children, Nan to our 18 terrific grandchildren, must have had a stroke. Lots of people, including my own mother, recovered from strokes. Betsy will too, I hoped. I was wrong. After several days of carefully examining Betsy and countless images of her head and body, the extraordinary doctors at Mayo gently delivered their findings, verbally and in writing. Quote, "Your wife has a degenerative asymmetric brain disorder called corticobasal syndrome. It is characterized by apraxia and rigidity on one side of the body. These symptoms are often accompanied by dementia and cognitive disarray. As of now, it is incurable and untreatable." End quote. My initial reaction to this devastating diagnosis was, Betsy, you and I have been through a lot together. We have had so many things planned for our golden years. I'm a U.S. Marine. We're a team and followers of the miracle worker, Jesus Christ. We're going to beat this evil malady. But we haven't. Shortly after we returned home from Rochester, Minnesota, Major General John Grenalds, U.S. Marine Corps retired, and his wife Norwood, dear friends since the 1970s when their example led us to faith in Christ, came to visit us. After listening to the diagnosis, John asked, "Who are you feeling sorry for, Betsy or you?" After thinking about it, I replied, "Me." John nodded and said, "Your new mission, Marine, is to become the very best caregiver Betsy will ever have on earth." Thus began for me the most challenging physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual experience of my 80 years on earth. That was nearly 5 years ago. Despite many months of reading, listening to coaches, viewing countless videos, even keeping company with several thousand terribly wounded soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines, and their families, I was exhausted and adrift on how to be Betsy's caregiver. Then Peter Rosenberger sent his draft of this inspiring book. Finally, I thought, someone who knows what I'm going through. He's been there, done that. A Minute for Caregivers is now my go-to primer for every challenge I face in caring for my best friend. If being a caregiver to someone you love is part of your life, you need this book. Introduction. I'd recommend a book for you to read, but you're the guy to write it. Walking into a mental health facility in Nashville, I stood silently for a moment until a woman at the front desk asked, "Are you lost?" With tears filling my eyes, I nodded while muttering, "I guess I am." Sniffling a bit, I wryly asked, "Do you all take walk-ins?" Both people sitting behind the counter responded with strange looks on their faces. With exasperation, I inwardly asked, "Really? This is a mental health facility, and that's the question that gets me a funny look? It's not like I was dressed as a Wookiee or anything." "Would you like to talk to a counselor?" they asked. Prudently holding my tongue while nodding affirmatively, I followed them to another counter. After staff members took my wallet, keys, and later my blood pressure, I found myself at a dilapidated table in a stark room. With faded paint on the walls and chairs that had seen better days, I felt like I sat in a precinct interrogation room from what could best be described as early Law and Order. After a few minutes, a pleasant woman opened the door and introduced herself as a staff counselor. "What's brought you here today, Peter?" Haltingly, I recounted the journey of my life as a family caregiver. Many years into the role by that time, I also shared my own recent surgery that went sideways, nearly causing me to bleed out on the table. 4 units of blood, a post-op infection, and a bumpy recovery later, I discovered the inability to sleep. Simply put, I felt spent. It all tumbled out to this patient woman. I dumped a lifetime's supply of frustration, weariness, resentment, fear, obligation, guilt, shame, heartache, and anger onto the battered table. But behind all those feelings lay the even greater anguish of grief. Such is the life of a family caregiver. To date, my wife Gracie has endured more than 85 operations, including the amputation of both legs. More than 100 physicians have treated her in 13 hospitals. In addition, Gracie has undergone 150-plus minor procedures and lives with relentless pain, all from a 1983 car accident when she was only 17. I met her a few years after her ordeal following surgery number 21. She lost both her legs after our children were born, and although we experienced seasons without massive trials, those seasons remained short and infrequent. Following my marathon purging in the examination room, I took a deep breath and waited for the counselor's response. The overpowering weariness and angst led me to hope I could stay and receive treatment for exhaustion. What I really wanted was rest. Turns out they don't do that sort of thing, except maybe in Hollywood during the 1940s. After telling a trained mental health professional that I felt I was crazy while inside a mental health facility, I admit to experiencing great curiosity about what would happen next. Thinking for a moment, she said, I can't keep you here." "You're not crazy," she quickly added. With a raised eyebrow, I asked if I could get that in writing. "There's quite a list who'd like to see that," I muttered glumly. Chuckling, she further said, "No, you're not crazy, but you are burned out." Retrieving a notepad from her jacket, she wrote some names and offered, "I can refer you to some counselors who might be helpful." Nodding in acceptance, I took her list. Switching gears, she added, "We've been giving out box lunches to people today, and there's one left. It's tuna fish. You want it?" Not once have I turned down a tuna fish sandwich, and the record remains intact. Escorting me out of the room, she led me across the hall and grabbed the last box lunch from the refrigerator. Handing it to me, she added something that would change my life. "I'd recommend a book for you to read, but you're the guy to write it." Reclaiming my wallet and keys, I trekked to the parking lot. Without turning the car on, I sat quietly behind the wheel and opened the box to see a sandwich, soda, chips, apple, and a cookie. Savoring every bite as if from the finest restaurant, I reflected on her words about me writing a book for caregivers. What kind of book would I write for caregivers? I scoffed to myself. What would I say to them? Taking another bite, I half snorted. What would I say to myself? Those questions launched my journey into learning the language of caregivers. Drawing upon my 35-plus years and counting of caring for my wife, I answered those questions and more. Now, fluent in caregiver, I speak directly to caregivers' hearts and address the train wreck behind the weary eyes of those who stand between a vulnerable loved one and an even worse disaster. Sadly, I don't remember the name of that counselor who helped direct my feet to what would become my life's work. Yet I remain deeply grateful she saw past my distress and offered compassion, insights, and sustenance for the journey, even if it was just a box lunch. The inspiration for this current book unexpectedly arrived while talking with an individual at a doctor's billing office. When I inquired how she was doing that day, she enthusiastically exclaimed, "Great, it's Friday!" Without thinking, I embarrassingly grumbled, "Friday means nothing to me. Every day is Monday." After finishing that conversation, I considered the reality of every day is Monday. Not just for me, but for many of my fellow caregivers. Knowing the existence of the caregiving life, I sought to give myself and other caregivers a 1-minute message to strengthen us for those every day is Monday moments. The job of a family caregiver remains filled with many dangers, toils, and snares. As a burned-out caregiver, I tried to have myself committed to a mental health institution, but all I received was a tuna sandwich, along with the invitation to dig deep within and help point fellow caregivers to safety, often for 1 minute at a time. Jack Nicklaus once said, "Resolve never to quit, never to give up, no matter what the situation." Chapter 1. The Opinions of Others. In 1986, my wife, then fiancée, underwent surgery on her right ankle to save her crushed leg. Although she ultimately lost both legs years later, hope remained in the driver's seat at the time. While this surgery was her 22nd best count since her 1983 car accident, it was my first with her. Following the operation, the surgeon provided a favorable report, and everyone expressed relief. Stating she'd be in recovery for some time, he suggested, "You can't see her for a while, so why don't you take a break?" Following doctor's orders, I went to a movie. I later learned of the clutched pearls and the tongue clucking that occurred while I sat in the theater. One of them, a holy roller type with a "My other car is a chariot of fire" bumper sticker on her Cadillac, piled on to Gracie's family about my inability to care for her. Stunned at the response, I mistakenly allowed shame and fear of disapproval to drive future actions. That unfortunate pattern continued for years before learning to trust my instincts. I also better discovered how to handle unsolicited opinions flung by the ill-informed and inexperienced. Trusting in our instincts while detaching from others' disapproval helps avoid resentment while allowing clarity of thought. And caregivers desperately need to think clearly. It's okay to watch a movie, go for a drive, take a walk, and by all means, keep firm boundaries with the pearl clutchers. Charles Spurgeon once said, "None are more unjust in their judgments of others than those who have a high opinion of themselves." Chapter 2. Collect the Facts and Fears. A listener shared her frustration, weariness, and burnout after years of caring for her husband following a traumatic brain injury. At 68, she expressed growing concern regarding her abilities and his diminishing ones. He's got a colostomy, ileostomy, and a host of other physical issues requiring full-time care, and I'm just exhausted. His mind is sharp, but his body is severely impaired, and I am conflicted about a long-term care facility. Listening to her get it all out, I shared, "It seems you're nearing a decision point where his needs eclipse your efforts. You may be closer than you realize. Regardless, how about writing down what an appropriate long-term facility looks like for you and your husband? With that in mind, and given the waiting list for so many facilities, you could seek the proper place together while you could still care for him. If the crisis moment arrives, you've already paved the road so that the transition is a bit smoother." As caregivers, we often must make decisions that benefit the whole unit, not just one person. The unit depends upon a capable caregiver, but fear, guilt, and obligation can hamper making the best possible decision in an impossible situation. So many couples struggle with this dynamic, and there's no easy path. Wedding vows discuss long-term care, but not long-term care facilities. Yet leaning on a facility doesn't equate to abandoning the vows. Instead, it can help both parties better keep them. General George S. Patton once said, "When you have collected all the facts and fears and made your decision, turn off all your fears and go ahead." Chapter 3. Aggressive Assurance. During a recent medical event with my wife, she received significant time with the acute pain management team. To my surprise, they engaged me, asked questions, solicited my thoughts as Gracie's longtime caregiver. Recognizing that post-operative pain management with her is a bit of a trick, they listened as I shared numerous incidents from her long journey. After relating her history, I added, "In my experience, I found that one of the most effective ways to help her is aggressive assurance, constantly reinforcing, 'We've got you, and we're on top of this.'" The pain management professor immediately jumped in and addressed his students. "I can't agree more with the importance of assuring the patient and easing the anxiety," he stated emphatically. "Chronic pain patients understand pain in ways we can't because they live with it daily. They also know what it's like to experience intractable pain and the terror involved when unable to communicate or the frustration of not being understood." The students, professor, and I talked a bit more, and I watched them scramble to take notes and remember the importance of aggressive assurance for patients in pain. Later, the professor returned to the room and specifically asked to see me. As he detailed the plan his team implemented to help Gracie, my eyes filled with tears when he looked at me and quietly said, "Caregivers also respond well to aggressive assurance." Lao Tzu once said, "From caring comes courage." Chapter 4. Do the next right thing. If caregivers mapped out a decision tree for our daily lives, it would look like a forest. Each day we're faced with numerous choices, and most seem filled with unpleasant outcomes. Sometimes the decisions before us have a paralyzing effect, and we don't know what to do next. In those moments, we serve ourselves well to choose the next right thing as our action step. The big problems become more approachable when our heads and our hearts calm down. For that to happen, our decisions require reduction. Unlike the giant single unpleasant task of eating the elephant one bite at a time, decision reductions help us focus by redirecting our eyes from the myriad choices to the micro steps in our path. Maybe the next right thing is to drink water, sit down with a bowl of soup, take a nap, or even go for a walk. Although the problem usually remains, we tackle it better with a calmer and more disciplined mind. When offered this path, we invariably know the next right thing to do. We just usually need permission, not from others, but from ourselves. The Bible supports this when affirming that God's word is a lamp unto my feet. It is a lamp, not a searchlight. Do the next right thing with the light provided. Henry David Thoreau once said, "Not until we are lost do we begin to understand ourselves." Chapter 5. Harsh Judgment. Interviewing a couple who raised 2 children with Huntington's disease, also known as HD, on my program, they relayed a heartbreaking story where they stood before a judge who clearly didn't understand the nature of HD. After repeated arrests for shoplifting, violent behavior, and other issues, the judge commented from the bench that she felt this resulted from bad parenting. Unable to address the court or defend themselves, the couple shared, "We had to take it on the chin." A 5-minute search or a phone call by the judge would have provided a bigger picture of the nature of this horrific disease that brutalizes both patients and their caregivers. Sadly, the judge chose to go with an uninformed decision and a regrettable lack of compassion. While the judge's comments remain grievous, how many caregivers don the black robe and make harsh and ill-informed pronouncements upon themselves while looking in the mirror? Countless caregivers spend way too much time condemning themselves for the out-of-control behavior of someone else. Whatever we wish that judge to have said to this broken and despairing couple, we would benefit from posting that same message on our bathroom mirrors. Abraham Lincoln said, "I have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice." Chapter 6. Facing Our Giants. Before the famous altercation with Goliath, when David expressed anger at the blasphemous giant, one of his embarrassed older brothers who camped at the battle scene furiously derided him. But King Saul heard about David, and astonishingly, the king allowed the teenager to fight Goliath. Saul even put his tunic and armor on him. Saul was tall, but David wasn't, and the king's armor didn't fit. Struggling to function in the ill-fitting battle garb, David removed it and faced Goliath in his way, depending upon God's might. David recognized he couldn't succeed while wearing something that didn't fit him. How many try to conquer a Goliath while wearing something that doesn't fit? The conditions of our loved ones serve as formidable giants to us, and we can't fight them while trying to be, do, and act like something that doesn't fit us. David faced Goliath with his familiar sling and his even more familiar trust in God's abilities. While not a trained soldier, David's love and trust provided the courage to face a giant. Most of us aren't trained medical professionals, and we don't have to be. When facing our giants, we can be ourselves and with love and trust remain confident the battle is the Lord's. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 47. Chapter 7. Not making it worse counts as a win. As caregivers, we regularly feel intense pressure to fix or achieve. Yet, despite our best efforts, many of the circumstances we face seem unyielding. Our self-judgment over things beyond our control often leads to an incorrect verdict of failure. Taking a step away from the caregiver realm, consider the slap heard around the world at the 2022 Academy Awards. When Will Smith assaulted Chris Rock on stage in front of a global audience, Chris Rock responded with extraordinary restraint. Maintaining his composure, Chris Rock continued with the show and walked away with nearly universal approval because he didn't worsen an awful situation. Not only did he handle himself well on stage, but in the ensuing media frenzy, he remained quiet about the event. Rock chose to address the incident on his timing when temperatures cooled. As caregivers, we regularly face situations that often tempt or provoke us into intense emotional reactions. Taking a page from Chris Rock, we can incorporate a simple strategy with uncontrollable experiences, which is not making it worse counts as a win. When we restrain our emotions and master our response to any given circumstances, we live a bit calmer and can add more victories to the win column. Daniel Webster once said, "Liberty exists in proportion to wholesome restraint." Chapter 8. A Time for Everything. While checking on my wife during rounds following a significant surgery, the neurosurgeons inquired how things were going. With a serious expression, I inquired if Tourette syndrome was a complication of this surgery. Gracie hoarsely and indignantly whispered she did not have Tourette syndrome. Even through their mask, the smiles of the surgical team lit up the room. For a moment, laughter distracted us all from the hardship of her recent surgery and her considerable pain. Gracie is keenly aware of the seriousness of her challenges and hardly needs me to remind her. However, she does require a lifeline to brighter days ahead and companionship along the journey. Hence, I tease and flirt outrageously with her, even in a hospital. She weakly smiled and rolled her eyes at me when I imitated Jeff Foxworthy and said, "If you hang a sock on your wife's hospital room door, you might be a redneck." I couldn't help but notice as she rolled her eyes that tears didn't fill them. Humor and optimism remain great weapons against despair. While many challenges and heartaches seem permanent, we can still purpose to live with joy, gratitude, and even laughter. A time to weep and a time to laugh. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 4. Chapter 9. A bowl of soup and a kind word. During a challenging hospital stay for my wife, friends called and asked me to stop by their home. After doing laundry, I swung by their house while returning to the hospital. Smiling at my puzzled look, they directed me to the kitchen table where a single-place setting awaited. Your in-laws are caring for your boys, and the hospital staff is caring for Gracie. Sit, eat, and let us care for you. They promptly served me a steaming bowl of vegetable beef soup, a massive slice of cornbread, and a large glass of tea. As a child of the South, they couldn't have picked a better meal for me. I tried to make conversation but couldn't find the words. "Just eat and rest," they repeated several times. After finishing the meal, I got up to head back to the hospital, and they both hugged me. You have a lot to do, but now do it on a full stomach, knowing that you're loved. Many express difficulties in knowing how to help a caregiver, but most caregivers agree that it's not complicated. Sometimes it's just a bowl of soup and a kind word. The angel of God came back and shook him, Elijah, awake again and said, "Get up and eat some more. You've got a long journey ahead of you." 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 7. Chapter 10. Don't take this on your next vacation. While a change of scenery can ease the heartache and struggles of our lives, it's pointless if we pack our resentments and bitterness for the trip. Despite Yellowstone National Park's pristine and soul-stirring beauty, visitors still bring their drama to the faraway fields of bison and Old Faithful. A sad set of statistics for the world's first national park is the number of drunk drivers and domestic abuse cases handled yearly. Park rangers will undoubtedly affirm that people pack their strife with them. Misery's jurisdiction doesn't end at any park's borders. It's hard to imagine saving up all year long and going to the trouble of traveling so far only to end up standing in front of one of the federal judges in the park. While tempted to express disapproval of those arrested for such things in Yellowstone Park, how is that different for many caregivers who think a change of scenery or circumstances can serve as an antidote for discord? Yet if misery can be carried, it can also be put down. There is no vacation destination that will cure bitterness. The spectacular cannot accomplish what we refuse to implement. We can better appreciate the beauty in different locations once we choose to experience them in our current situation. The world is full of people looking for spectacular happiness while they snub contentment. Doug Larson. Chapter 11. Healthiness is in your hands. The neediness of an infirmed loved one frequently obscures a caregiver's fatigue, stress, and dangerous health patterns. Moreover, even if noticing the caregiver's exhaustion and strain, those warning signs often go unheeded. Usually armed only with love and a sense of responsibility, caregivers recklessly deplete themselves physically and emotionally while caring for a vulnerable loved one. Passion and commitment are admirable, but how long can the patient feel better at the caregiver's expense? When faced with chronic impairments, love and responsibility accomplish more when directed to the caregiver's well-being first. However, many caregivers postpone healthy physical, emotional, and even sound fiscal decisions for themselves while in the throes of caregiving. Since no one else, particularly a sick or medicated individual, can lead the efforts toward one's own healthiness, the responsibility of a healthy lifestyle remains solely in the caregiver's hands. Addressing the caregiver's needs, not wants, isn't selfish. Quite the opposite. It helps ensure that the impaired loved one's care is in the hands of a healthier caregiver. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "The first wealth is health." Chapter 12. A Path Through the Storm. When storms loom, media outlets often show footage of people placing plywood on homes and businesses and hunkering down. Caregiving is its own storm. Although sometimes receiving advance notice, caregiving can often descend like a tornado and last a lifetime. If cameras followed caregivers, many daily activities might resemble the frantic bustle of those boarding homes and businesses. Imagine trying to build a 5-year plan while simultaneously working to survive a hurricane. Incredulously, many caregivers regularly attempt such a feat. While the aftermath of hurricanes usually brings clearer skies that allow rebuilding, the lengthy caregiving storm usually ends at a cemetery, and the path to rebuilding appears shrouded in confusion, despair, and even desolation. Yet a path through and following the storm does exist. It's called endurance. The challenges of caregiving can forge a resilience and resolve that spills into every area of life. Many faced with hardships lament, "How do I get out of this?" Caregivers, and others, can instead change that question to, "What can I become through this?" Entire marketing ads promote tempting versions of success that sadly ring hollow as the years pass. Endurance remains its own success while standing the test of time. Knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Romans chapter 5, verse 3 through 4. Chapter 13. Risk is a part of life, but joy is a choice. Happy New Year can often feel perfunctory and even meaningless in the caregiving world. Most of us know that January 1, 2, 3, etc. usually brings the same challenges as the previous week and year or years. Yet although our responsibilities may not change, we can. While many fall into the trap of ambitious but unrealistic New Year's resolutions, I usually give my New Year's resolutions up for Lent, caregivers can instead determine to live rather than just survive. Living, however, requires risk. Life is perilous. Despite our culture obstinately working to mitigate all risk, thank the lawyers for that, isolating to avoid disease, injury, rejection, or failure is no way to live. Nor is avoiding death the same as living. From gardening to music, anything that involves life, art, and creativity comes with the risk of failure, as do relationships, business ventures, and caregiving. This year, I intend to push myself to learn, try, accomplish, and even fail new things. History teaches that risk and heartache remain unavoidable, but joy is a choice. And I love this quote from Lonesome Dove, the character Augustus McCrae, played by Robert Duvall, talking to Tommy Lee Jones, playing Captain Woodrow F. Call. "It ain't dying I'm talking about, it's living. I doubt it matters where you die, but it matters where you live." Larry McMurtry. Chapter 14. The Promise. Many caregivers struggle with decades-old promises to make sure to never put mom in a nursing home. When making that promise, most recall healthier times when the thought of entering a facility seemed far on the horizon. Reality sneaks up on the best of us, and we find ourselves faced with uncomfortable circumstances. The promise's tether can quickly transform into a noose around the neck of...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?